Hi friends, my name is Lindsay and I run the blog Books for Christian Girls. Welcome back to the little corner of the internet where I talk mainly about Christian fiction. Today is a recent reads and I have Christian fiction, clean fiction, and a lot of fairy tale retellings because that's just still what I've been in the mood for. You could also call this my January wrap-up because I'm just going to talk about all the books I've read in January, which was 21 books. I really like my Kindle. That Kindle is life-changing in many ways. But I'm just going to talk about those. I've read a couple already here in February, but I want to kind of just keep these separated by month, I think, if that works out. That's the idea. We're going to try that for this year. I've done that for the last couple of months, but I want to see if we can do that. So these are my 21 books I read in January. We're going to start off with Christian fiction, and my normal disclaimers is always that I'll have content reviews of all of these listed down below. I organized these from kind of lowest in the genre to highest in the genre. And I think that's it, so let's get started. My first book for the Christian fiction category is Serial Burn by Lynette Eason. I unfortunately gave this one 2.5 stars, which I'm really bummed about because I was anticipating this one. But this is about Jesslyn. I keep wanting to fix her name to Jesselyn with an A, but there's no A, so it's just Jesslyn. I'm going to try to get that. But she is the fire marshal, and she has been trying to figure out for 20 years now who set the fire that killed her parents and her younger sisters when she was young. And obviously that's very traumatic, and now she is a fire marshal to keep that from happening to anyone else. And she is basically thrown down the gauntlet, if you will, to the arsonist that she's still hunting you and that she's going to find you. And then things start happening, like the church gets burned down, and then this other building has been burned down, and then this is happening. Lots of things are happening, and it's up to her and the male lead, who is a FBI agent. Yeah, he was an FBI agent, Nathan, and it's up to them, to try to figure out what's going on and is it connected to her past. One thing I've noticed with this series, this is book 3 of the series so far, and I struggled with book 2 as well in this because we're introduced to the whole friend group in the first book. So I feel like you really need to kind of just binge read this series so you can see everybody's official meetings and meet cues that happened in the first book. So that was kind of a problem for me, but mainly I really just didn't like the plot twist. I saw it coming around the halfway point and I was just really disappointed that was it. That's what it went through. And sometimes if I guess the plot twist and the villain and the culprit and whatever, I'm like, okay, that's not bad. I can see that. But I was really just disappointed with how this one worked out. I'm very bummed about that. I really am, y'all. I have maybe lower hopes now for the 4th book, and that is releasing, I think, in August. It's towards the end of the year. I can't remember. The cover is really cool, and it gives me goosebumps when I see it, so I really want to like it. But yeah, this one was just an unfortunate miss for me. I truly just think, though, it's because of the plot twist. And then with the romance, it was just we saw them prior, and both of them have had massive childhood traumas, and that's kind of how they bond and connect. But I didn't really know them outside of their traumas, and to be fair, I was talking with book lover Amanda about this book, and she made a really good point that Jesslyn did say she didn't know who she was outside of her trauma and trying to track down the arsonist. So I was like, okay, that's a fair point. She doesn't know who she is, so how could I know who she is? That's a good point. But I still just didn't care for it, which is unfortunate. I don't know, sometimes I really like Lynette Eason's books, and then sometimes it's just a miss, and I feel like that's been pretty consistently back and forth. I don't think I'm ever going to have one that tops Crossfire, because I just really like that one from her prior series. But I'm going to read the 4th book, and hopefully I like it more than this one. Just as a note, though, on Serial Burn, there are triggers for that, but they're spoiler triggers. So that's really hard for me to put that on my reviews. I typically try to be as vague as possible, but just as a heads up, it does have some harder topics, obviously, just even with the whole, her family was killed in a fire, she's the only one left kind of thing. That's traumatic enough. But then there's other things as well. And it was some of those other things that I was just like, I don't care for this, which was unfortunate. So, oh well. Another Christian fiction book I read was A Noble Assassin by Abigail K. Harris. I gave this one 3 stars. It is part of the Cornerstone's I think Cornerstone. Stone. Not plural. Stone. And those are new adult non-magical fairy tale retellings by multiple different authors. I think there's 16 books in this series. This is book 7, I think, 7 or 8. I think it was 7. And it is a Three Little Pigs retelling, and I had never read a retelling of the Three Little Pigs, so I was very intrigued by it. But you also just have the title of A Noble Assassin. And I was very intrigued. I do feel like this book should have been maybe like 100 pages longer, because it had like a really strong premise where this main guy is called the Wolf, Three Little Pigs, and he's been the assassin for the king that kind of took over the throne. The evil king took over the throne, and he's basically been given this assignment to go track down the princes and princess from the former king and, you know, do away with them. So he's on the hunt for them, but he's really a softie for his younger siblings that he's kind of like taken in and adopted. And the premise was so strong right there, and I was like really getting into it, but I struggled with different elements and the writing style at times. I feel like had it just been fleshed out maybe 100 more pages, it would have really been good. Even more so, like 300 pages. Let's really get into the story and then the dynamics and the elements. Because, again, strong premise, but I did have to give it a 3 because it wasn't fully there for me, which was unfortunate because I thought it had a good premise. I keep saying that, but it did. I read the little novella Hours We Regret by Chelsea Michelle, which is a pen name for 2 different authors. One author I have read, the other author I haven't read, so I'm very curious to check out her books. But I thought this was like a cozy mystery. It is in fact not. It was way more suspenseful than I was expecting. But this follows 2 girls, Chelsea and Michelle. My mind was a little bit like, oh, well, that's just wild because, you know, that's the pen name. Anyway, okay, I thought that was interesting. But they are twin sisters, and they're very different from each other. But one of them has become kind of a little obsessed with the serial killer that is loose in their general vicinity. And the other one is a bank teller, and she's just like, don't worry about it. It's fine. But then things happen, of course. And phone calls happen and go unanswered, and suspicion, and then a breakup. I'm very curious how the romance is going to go in this book. In this series, I guess. Not book, the series. This is the prequel novella to the series, and then the first book, and I think there's a 1.5? I think something about that. I took a screenshot that I noticed somewhere of the order to read these books. It's only like 100 pages. I'm curious to read more about this world because you don't really get answers. It kind of like ends a little abruptly. So I'm thinking maybe the next book will pick up with more info about that. Because like, we don't have all the answers. And that kind of drives me just a wee bit batty. Just a wee bit. But it's a prequel. So I'm thinking maybe the next book, which is a full-length book that's like 300 plus pages, I think. I think it's a pretty chunky. That one should have answers, right? I would think. Like, I'm thinking it's going to be like drawn out maybe. We'll see how it goes, but I'm looking forward to continuing it. I gave this one 3.5 stars. Nothing else really to say. Going back to the Cornerstone series, I have 2 more books. One of them was A Noble Princess by Saraina, maybe? Saraina? I'm so sorry. That's probably not either of those is right. I'm sorry, Whitney. And this was a Goose Girl retelling. This is technically book 5 in this series, but you can read them out of order so far. It sounds like there's going to be a bonus novella collection that many of the authors in this multi-authored series are doing together. And it's going to be like connecting their book to other books. And so they're not really, you don't have to read them in order basically is what I'm saying. In a roundabout way, but this was a Goose Girl retelling, and the main guy is the bodyguard to the Crown Princess, and the Crown Princess is having to be taken to another kingdom to marry their Crown Prince. I still don't know why she couldn't rule. I'm still a little lost on that, but that's how it went. And of course, bodyguard romances. It's not going to go the way you think it's going to go. Well, at least it's not how you think. Let me take that back. It's not how the characters think it's going to go, but you know full well how it's going to go. I liked this one well enough. I wish we could have seen more of their friendship because we're kind of just told their friendship, that they're best friends, and I would have loved to like see that more. But again, these are shorter books in this series. They've all been like around 200-ish pages, so you got to work with what you got kind of thing. But I did like it. I would say this could be triggering for adoptees, because of certain comments and words and phrases used. And then also there is physical and verbal abuse from a parent. So just as a heads up for that. It was overall a sweet story. Our main character had lessons to learn and some growth. And it was overall cute. Overall cute. Another one in the Cornerstone series I gave 3.5 stars, and that is A Noble Protector by Madisyn Carlin. I think this cover is really pretty. Unfortunately, these are all starting to like run together in my head because I've been reading like one a week for reviewing purposes. But I did like this one. This is a Wild Swans retelling, and I've read a Wild Swans retelling that was a clean fiction book by Deborah Grace White, and I really, really liked it. I talked about that in my last recent reads or the one before, I don't remember. I think it was the prior one. And I really liked that though, so I was really curious to see a Christian fiction version of it, if you will, and I liked this one quite a bit. Our main girl is Gwen, and she is the outcasted princess of another land that is having to take refuge as basically a hermit in the woods in a cabin. And then a princess of the land she's hiding in has become her friend, and when lots of different things are happening, because you know, wild swans, evil stepmother, all that kind of thing, trying to poison people. She comes to our main girl Gwen with one of her brothers asking if she can help them, and so that sets them off on a journey to find this special plant, and it was overall pretty cute. Like I've said with other ones in the series, I would have liked it to be just a little bit longer, particularly the end of this one, like just go on just a little bit more, because I think that would have added to the story better and kind of closed it out maybe with a ribbon or a bow. It sounds like the author is doing a connecting series to this book though, so I might have to check those out. It was overall a pretty cute one. One of my favorites, I would say, of the series. Maybe number 4 of the series for me so far. I'd have to think about that, but probably about that. I have a book to finally hold up, and that is A Noble Companion, continuing on with the Cornerstone series, by Rachel, and I'm not going to pronounce the author's last name because I know I'm not going to pronounce it right, so I'm so sorry. But this is an Ugly Duckling retelling. I didn't quite get that element of it. Our main girl is Madalena, and she was raised in this wealthy area, but because of different things happening and then her father passing away, she has now had to work for a living. But she grew up with this one family of, I think it's 3 or 4 boys, and it's kind of just always been assumed that her and the oldest one will get married. But now that her status has kind of changed, she feels like she needs to basically prove herself for this richer family. And so she is going to go off on a journey to find a dragon's lair and basically, you know, get what she needs for her dowry. Is that how we say that word? Maybe? I'm not sure. But his younger brother, who has a crush at her. I'm sorry. That was okay. Anyway, his younger brother, Javier, has had a crush on her for a long time. Sorry, I squeaked and squealed and that didn't really make any sense, did it? But Javier, who is the second of the brothers, goes on this trip with her, and he has liked her for a long, long time. And so they go on their little journey together. It was really cute. If I could like kind of give you like an elevator pitch for this book, I would say it's the Josefina American Girl books with a little bit of Dora the Explorer, but like the good like, you know, the treasure finding part of it. And then even like a Love Comes Softly element, because it's kind of like a fantasy western Spanish California setting. It was different. It was very different. I was not expecting that going into this book, but I ended up actually really liking it. I was like, this is so different from what I normally read, but I liked it. And I also just love that the main guy was absolutely smitten with her. That always wins me over, let's be honest here. So I gave this one 4 stars. It should also, though, be noted that there were some parts that made me squirm that had to do with like blood and injuries and animals getting hurt. So, you know, like just as a heads up, if you were super sensitive to that, I'm typically okay, but I don't know how it was in this one. I was just like, you know, kind of wincing every once in a while. And there also was talking animals, which I am notorious for saying no talking animals. No, but I actually really liked a certain talking animal in this book. And it was the dragon. Let me just tell you. I really liked the dragon in this book. He was great. He was adorable. He probably wouldn't like being called that, but regardless, it was overall really cute. I think I'm going to have to check out more books by this author. My next book is a Christian fiction young adult book, and that is My Refuge by Ashley Saliby. I'm so sorry. I meant to message the author and ask how to say her last name. I'm not good with last names. If you're new here, I'm not good with last names. But this one was really... it was good. I was really nervous though going into this book, and I kind of had pushed it off a little bit because we follow 4 different teen girls that are all about like 14, 15, and they are going through 4 very different things. We have Eden, who lives in Texas, and all of a sudden her heart has kind of stopped working, so she's having to stay in a hospital until a heart transplant happens. And then we have Zahara, I think is how we pronounce her name, and she is living in a refugee camp in Syria. May is a Chinese American girl who is living in Toronto during the shutdown restrictions. I don't know if YouTube still triggers things. It's Google. I have no idea, so I'm just going to say it that way. And then we have Katya, maybe is how we pronounce her name, and she is living in a bomb shelter with her younger brother apart from their mom during a war in Ukraine. So we have 4 very different things going on there. And the tagline for the book is 4 girls from around the world imprisoned by circumstances but pursued by hope. And I thought that was a really good tagline after finishing the book. I was like, that fits that very well. With those different elements, I would kind of give a slight trigger warning or just content warning really for mentions of wars and living through wars, bombings, panic attacks, and then also dealing with inappropriate pictures. Interesting enough, even though I was so concerned about getting the girls mixed up, I actually didn't. They are all living through very different and unique circumstances, and how they are reacting to different things and what's going on in their lives, they were different enough that I was able to tell them apart, which I was really glad. I do just want to note though that with May and her big part of her story being about inappropriate pictures and a guy in her class trying to get her to send them, and that's a part of the book. So as a note for parents and for readers, I have all about that in my review. I personally was pleasantly surprised with how the author handled it, because that is something I've seen discussed before in Christian YA books, and it typically comes across as the author kind of turns on her mom hat, if you will, and it's kind of like the readers being lectured about, do this, don't do this, and that happens a lot in older Christian YA, so I was nervous about that in this book, but the author actually didn't. I didn't feel like I was being lectured or anything. The author of this book, though, kept it very natural, and I have to say I was very impressed by that, pleasantly surprised and impressed, because how the girls react and handle different things felt so age appropriate for what they were going through, and how each one of them had a strong Christian influence in their lives. Even Zahara, who is a Muslim in Syria, she gets taught by a teacher that is a Christian woman, and it was very interesting to see that element. It kind of really showed you how the good Lord had his hand on all of their lives, and I really liked how that worked out. I'm looking forward to reading the second book, and I wasn't expecting to be emotional with this book, but by the end, how each of the girls have grown, I felt like a proud big sister. I really did, so it was a pleasant surprise. It really was. So I gave that one 4 stars. My next book for the Christian fiction genre is a cozy mystery, and that is Showstopper by Shirley, Raye, Redmond. This is technically book 5 in the Mysteries of the Cobble Hill Farm series, but you can read them out of order so far, and typically you can. I actually think this was maybe my favorite of the series. I liked the first book because we were getting introduced to everybody, but this one I'm trying to remember what my rating was for the first book, but I gave this one 4 stars. I really like this one, but it's a dog mystery, so we're not really shocked by that. Basically, a prize-winning Scottish Terrier is kidnapped out of his yard, and Harriet, our main girl, who is his vet and just the main girl of the series, has to figure out what happened to Petey and what's going on. And then you have a second timeline where somebody found a dog collar that has medals and awards, but it's like historically old, and they're trying to figure out who does this belong to, where did it come from, what's going on, and that in turn leads to World War II history. And there's even letters throughout the book from a soldier in World War II and his rescue dog, and I loved that part. I don't know, the unconditional love of a dog is just so special and so precious, and this book really highlighted that. And I also just love the search and rescue dog theme and just seeing the working dog, so I really liked this one for a multiple of reasons, but it was good. It was good. As a note for potential teen readers or even preteen readers, the series has been very clean, but this one does talk about like puppy mills and the deplorable conditions of those, and then dog breeding and that kind of thing. And then you also have about the World War II bombings and deaths. So for sensitive readers, this might still be a little hard, but it might be okay for some. So feel free to check out my full content review about all of that. My next book is the last book for the Christian fiction genre today, and that is Sabotage at Cedar Creek by Janice Thompson. We all know I adore this author so much, so many of her books, so I was really looking forward to reading this one. This is the second book in the Little Red Truck Mysteries series. I liked the first one, but I actually would say I liked the second book much better personally. I gave this one 4 stars. I would suggest reading them in order, but I liked this one better. Just like the first book though, it follows Raylan, who is currently dating a nice guy. I actually liked him a lot better in this book than the first book. I wasn't sure about him in the first book, but her best friend is opening up a B&B, but there's been some vandalism and suspicious activity around the property, and they are trying to figure out what's going on. And then we also have like different love lines with Raylan's family. If you really like small town drama and kind of just southern silliness, for lack of a better word, you may really enjoy this series as well. If you have enjoyed other books by this author, like the Weddings by Bella series or the Brides with Style trilogy, this book really reminds me of those, with just the big family antics and just all the food and just the southern charm and Texas twangs. It's been fun, as I say, with my own Texas twang. So those are my Christian fiction books. I meant to point out at the beginning of this video that we are going to ignore the elephant in the room that is my disaster of a bookshelf. I was going to organize them this weekend, but I got distracted with other things. Imagine that. And so it's still a mess, and I needed to film this video today. So we are just gonna ignore the elephant in the room, okay? Okay, thank you. For clean fiction, I read 2 clean fairy tale retelling books that had to do with magical forces back to back, and that was not a smart idea in my in my opinion. But the first one was A Forest of Stolen Memories by Callie Thomas. I had read a prior book by this author and I didn't really care for it, so I thought I would give her books another try, and it still got 2 stars from me. The book starts and it is about Rosalind, and she's at her wedding date, but something's happened with her memories and she doesn't know what's happening, who she is, what's going on. She has absolutely no idea, which would be terrifying. That would be terrifying. I will give her that. And so she runs away from the crown prince and all the guards and all the guests, and she goes to this magical special forest, and this handsome young sorcerer guy, I don't remember if that was his title, but he's a magic user, Cedric, he kind of like hides her and takes her in, and of course that's where the romance starts. And it was intense. Oh, how can I explain this book? So we have Cedric, and he is a very he's grumpy, he's straight up grumpy, and I'm not a fan of grumpy male leads, so I was thinking maybe the other guy that she ran away from, maybe he's better, even though grumpy guy is most likely the male lead. He was in fact the male lead, but also in fact the other guy, the crown prince guy, he's not better. He's an obsessive, controlling freak, to put it nicely. Didn't care for him. He was just like, yikes. He was a walking red flag in so many ways. So many ways. And so because of him, it had a very darker feel to it. And I read, like, you know, fairy tale retellings and whatnot to just like have fun, chill out. This was not that. There was some kissing that was just a lot and just kind of on the sensual side, in my opinion. And I was gonna try out the second book, but I actually ended up hearing it was more in the romance content and just a lot. So I ended up just downloading it off of KU and just like doing a search for some answers that I was just moderately curious about. And yeah, I'm glad I didn't read that one based off of what I've seen about it, and then just the bits I read. I was like, no thank you. No thank you. So yeah, this was a miss. This was a miss. I don't know if I'm going to read any more books by this author. I have to say, like, I think her books are just going to have too many more of, like, that obsessive, morally gray male lead. So far, those seem to be the case. And I don't know, when a guy, like, growls and says, "You're mine," it's like that, restraining order on you. I don't think so. No, that is not romantic. Or, like, when they're described as, like, animal tendencies and, like, possessive and growling. The growl. Why are they always growling? I don't know. But yeah, no, I'm out. Bye. So, next book. Speaking of enchanted forests, so we have Pathways by Camille Peters. And I'm going to need, I know a couple of y'all have told me, "Oh, Lindsay, you're really liking Fairytale retellings. Check out her books." What series did you mean? That's what I need to know. Okay, I did not mean to sound so, attacking. I didn't mean that. I'm sorry. I gave this one 3 stars. It started off as a 4, and I was like, "Oh yeah, this is good." But we're going back to meeting the kind of obsessive control freak main guy in a forest. It's like, hello, this could go wrong so many ways. And it doesn't. It doesn't. But it could have. And I think that was my deal with this one is, the main guy. I don't do grumpy main guys. We know this. We've already talked about how much I loved, like, the puppy, golden retriever energy male leads. Flawless. Beautiful. Thank you. I'll take 14. Not really, but I like those. And so grumpy male leads, just, they don't do it for me. It's like, why are you grumpy? You should be happy. You're in my presence. Like, what is this? So basically in this one, there is a magic forest that can, like, alter and shift and, like, do new paths, which ironically in January, I had 3 books, not connecting at all. 3 books that had that. What are the odds? I don't know. Like, out of all the Fairytale retellings, have I read ones with forces that, like, shift and change paths before? No, but I read 3 in the month of January. That's just craziness. And so anyway, Aileen is our main girl, and she is just, like, she runs off to the forest, much to her mother's dismay, and just, like, goes in there and meets this handsome guy, and she's suspicious about him, but not as suspicious as she should have been. He was, like, grabby in my opinion. I didn't like him. I didn't like him. If you were fine with the prior book I talked about, you probably would be totally fine with this guy. You already know my opinion on both of these guys, so I thought he was toxic. And other reviewers called him toxic as well. That's fine. And honestly, I just read book 2 here in February, and I'm not going to talk about it much because that's for February's wrap-up. But we see this couple again, and I was just like, I can't cheer for y'all's romance because he's still giving me, like, that toxic, obsessive vibe, and it's just, no thank you. No, thank you. Let's be honest here, my dear friends. If we had a girl meet a guy in a forest by themselves, if this wasn't like a Fairytale retelling, it could be a horror thriller, it's going to end completely different. And I'm just, no. No. Let's meet in a ballroom or, you know, in the marketplace. I don't want to meet in a forest, and especially not a grumpy man in a forest. How can you be grumpy in a magical forest anyway? What's wrong with these guys? And also, just as a little side note, I really didn't like that the main girl in this book lied to her mom and, like, kept secrets from her mom. And, like, her mom is very anxious because her father, the husband, had kind of disappeared and they never knew what happened to him. So her mom was, like, rightfully worried about her daughter. But her daughter's just like, la 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 la, and off doing whatever the heck she wants to do. And I was getting annoyed with her. Obviously, I'm getting worked up, but yeah. If you don't read into the flaws in the characters and the possible toxic relationship, it was fun. 3 stars. I don't know. Okay, moving on to a book that was completely different for me, and that was A Gracious Hope by Robyn Sarty, I think is maybe how we pronounce the author's last name. Probably not. I'm so sorry. This is connected to one of my anticipated releases for the year. That is a mashup of Peter Pan and Rapunzel. And I wanted to read this book first because I knew they were connecting. And so A Gracious Hope is a mix-up of Sleeping Beauty and The Wizard of Oz. But it has that Scottish kind of lore in it, which was very interesting. I had just watched part of Brave prior to reading this book, so the accents were, like, there in my brain, and that was very fun. That was very fun. Our main girl is suddenly told, though, hey, you're a princess, gotta boot you out of our little magical forest. Again, with the magical forests. And she is booted out, goes to meet the king and queen, her parents. She didn't know they were her parents, obviously. And then she's basically been, you know, told that she's going to not necessarily fall asleep, but that she's going to fall down a hole led by this red dog, which has something to do in, like, Irish, Scottish, some kind of lore. I don't know. And that happens, and that's kind of like the fairy realm that she gets taken off into, and that's the Wizard of Oz nods. I'm not doing well explaining this book. Honestly, it was unique and it was different. I just think the bottom line is it wasn't my cup of tea. I don't know if it's all the British in my bloodline or what, but I've never been super interested in like Scottish history or folklore or even Irish. I think this was more Scottish though. If I remember right, it was more Scottish. Yes, Scottish lore. And it was interesting. I'm going to try the second book because number one, the cover is beautiful, but also a mashup between Rapunzel and Peter Pan has me interested. But it is going to have all of like the Scottish lore and the fairy tale mythological kind of creatures that I'm just not super familiar with. So I'm going to try it, but we'll see. This one, I gave 3 stars. It was very unique. One thing I really liked about the book was that it had a very springtime feel to it because there's all of like the nature descriptions and the flowers and venturing through fields of flowers. An illustrated version of this would have been really cool just to see all the flowers. Spoken as a flower nerd. It was just really quirky. I feel like if you are game for trying something completely maybe outside of your wheelhouse, you might give this one a try. It was definitely outside of my wheelhouse and I wasn't quite sure what was happening at times because of it, but it was different. It was different and I think that's okay to try something different every once in a while. I'll try the second book in this series, but yeah, just as a note, it wasn't really my cup of tea, but it totally could be your cup of tea. My next book is a secular middle grade historical mystery, and that is The Mystery of the Clockwork Sparrow by Katherine Woodfine. Okay, I had never seen this book anywhere before, but I saw a review of it on the Facebook group and I was like, oh my goodness, that sounds really cute. I really like mysteries in the middle grade since I want to try it out. It's historical. Okay, so I finally found them. They were kind of a pain to find this series, but I bought them and I was like, okay, I'll get to them. And then as soon as I post on my Instagram story that I'm reading them, I'm getting a bunch of messages from y'all, and then I added it to my Goodreads, and so many of y'all told me you love this series. I feel a little betrayed, my dear friends, that like nobody told me about this series prior. What's up with that? Y'all, this had Mysterious Benedict Society feels. And I mean that as like the highest compliment I could possibly ever give. I gave this one 4 stars. I really, really enjoyed it. I feel like I've missed out. I would have loved this series as a middle grade reader, though it actually was published when I was not a middle grade reader, when I was a teenager, so okay. But still, I would have adored this concept, this series then, and I'm just like, what? So, one thing I have learned, though, is that there are British editions and there are American editions. The American editions are The Mystery of da-da-da-da-da. The other one is just Clockwork Sparrow. The cover is white up there at the top for the British. And so, interesting thing. I listened to the audiobook of this while I was reading because I just did. And there was a few different words that were different here and there. But it wasn't really towards the end that made a difference. Because in the book, they call someone a fool. In this American edition book, they call this person a fool. In the audio, they call him a donkey. And I was just like, wait a second. And based on what I can tell, it's the British versus American difference. But like just as a heads up for parents or readers, if you have little ones listening, the audiobook has that. And I was like, that was not necessary. Completely not necessary. Come on, y'all. So that's what that is. But I just kind of want to read the back cover of this because I feel it's short. I can maybe do it. And it is a really good synopsis. So, you are cordially invited to attend the grand opening of Sinclair's department store. Enter a world of bonbons, hats, perfumes, and mysteries around every corner. Wonder at the daring theft of the priceless Clockwork Sparrow. Tremble as the most dastardly criminals in London enact their wicked plans. Gasp as our bold heroines, Miss Sophie Taylor and Miss Lillian Rose, break codes, devour ice buns, and vow to bring the villains to justice. A splendid adventure awaits you. And it was pretty splendid. I did enjoy it. I'm curious if the rest of the series is going to have just them two. Are we going to see the other 2 guys that are around their ages? Are we going to see them? I don't know. I hope we get to see them because it gave me the Mysterious Benedict Society feel with having the 4 kids. They're a bit older than the MBS kids, but it reminded me of that a lot, and I did really like it. I have to say, I really, really enjoyed this book. I can't wait to check out the rest of the series. I'll probably read one coming up here soon, I hope, the next book, because I enjoyed it quite a bit. I was very pleasantly surprised, and I'm still very crossed that nobody told me about this series prior. Y'all, I don't know, I'm really confused on this because it says the original English language edition, first published in Great Britain 2015 under the title Mystery of the Clockwork Sparrow. And that was in 2015. But then this is first American edition, 2016. So I think that is the difference between the editions, but I honestly am not positive. I haven't been able to find anyone talking about the British edition that has about language, but I'm pretty sure the audiobook was the British edition. So besides that, the audiobook was really good though. So yes, this was a very pleasant surprise. I was not expecting to like this book as much as I did, but I got such Mysterious Midnight Society feels from it. So I hope the rest of the series is good too. I hope so. And apparently there's a spin-off series this author has also done, so I may have to check those out, but very pleasant surprise. I liked it quite a bit. The descriptions and how whimsical it felt with those descriptions of the department store was really neat. This was set in a Victorian time period though, and overall I really liked it. I have to say, I hope the rest of the series matches my expectations, and then apparently there's a spin-off series as well, so I'll have to check out those after I finish it, I guess. But this was really good. I really liked this one. I don't know how I didn't know about this series prior, but it was really good. Another book I read was The Reluctant Godfather by Allison Tebo. When I say read, I actually listened to it, but I'm counting it to my reading challenge on Goodreads. I'm just going to do it. This is my third time listening to this book, and now I'm hopeful that maybe I will finally be able to continue with the rest of the series. Because I haven't. I have meant to do it every time and I don't. So I'm hopeful. I want to continue the rest of the series, but this follows Burndy, and Burndy is a very reluctant godfather, and he basically has two charges. Prince Carlin, he's a prince. Burndy doesn't really care for him, but he considers him a friend, I guess. And then you have Ella, who is being abused and mistreated by her stepfamily and basically treated as a servant. It's a Cinderella retelling, but from the Godfather's POV. And Burndy gets this brilliant, mind-blowing idea that he is going to make the two of them fall in love and get together, and then his job's done. He can just bake because he loves to bake. And I still, even though this was my third time reading it, I was still surprised by the ending. I don't know why. I can't remember all the events in this book, but it is just so much fun. Burndy is just super sarcastic and sassy, and he is just so much fun. I will say I would suggest reading it rather than the audiobook. The audiobook made Burndy sound like a crotchety old man, which he is in fact crotchety, but he is not old, he is young. So like that would be my one little note. I would suggest reading it. It's short, you can do it. It's really fun. And so hopefully now I can continue on with the rest of the series. Hopefully. That is the goal. And then my last books I want to talk about is a whole series. I want to try this year, or at least as long as I feel like it, every month I want to try to finish a series by a clean fairy tale retelling author. That's the idea. So I started this brilliant idea off with reading the Singer Tales series by Deborah Grace White. These are the main 6 books, and then there is another book that I will talk about as well, but let's do them in order. The first book in the series is Song of Ebony, and all of these are by Deborah Grace White, but this is a Snow White retelling. And this has to be one of the more unique versions of Snow White I think I've seen personally out of all the retellings I have read, because this main character, Bianca, is the crown princess, but she actually has a half younger sister, and I just really liked that element. This series had a lot about siblings, and you're gonna hear me talk about that, and I really liked that element. I am really struggling explaining the magic system of this world, but basically there are different places that have a lot of magic in the ground, like in the actual land, and if you are a human that is a singer, which not all humans are, but some are, and if you are a singer though, you are able to basically sing and call that magic and use it for whatever you want it to do. And also in this world there are elves and giants, so it kind of gave me a little bit of like Keeper of the Lost Cities but fairytale-esque, so I actually really liked that element, particularly in the later books of the series particularly. But I thought that was very interesting. I gave this one 3.5 stars. It was definitely not my favorite of the series, but I did think it was very interesting that we are living in the jungle, and then we've got the elves as the 7 dwarfs, and it was just very different, so I did like a lot of elements of it. So I went ahead and read the second book, which that is Song of the Sea by Deborah Grace White. Let's first appreciate this cover. Stunning. If I had to pick a favorite cover out of the series, it might be this one. I just think it's so pretty. It's not my favorite book of the series though, we'll get to that one. And I gave this one 3.5 stars. This is a Little Mermaid retelling, obviously, and it is very much the whole young mermaid princess falls for the handsome human prince and trying to get up on land. This was really different though. I've really been enjoying Little Mermaid retellings lately because every author does it differently, and I think that's so interesting. What they eat, whether it's like the sea creatures or are the sea creatures their pets, what do they wear, how do they communicate. I just think that's so fun because every author's done it differently so far, and I like seeing that. That makes me even more excited because typically the Little Mermaid plotline doesn't really have me very excited because we've got a rebellious little teen girl typically that doesn't know anything and is running off and making poor decisions, so that's not really enticing to me. But how the authors will do the mermaid elements always has me fascinated. And in this book, she runs off to the swims off and then runs to the shore because, you know, Little Mermaid. And she basically is trying to get the prince to fall in love with her. She rescued him, all that stuff, but her bodyguard comes up with her on land and different things happen. I don't really want to say too much. I kind of feel like the back cover says a little too much in my opinion. I liked it though. I thought it was good. The third book in the series is Song of Winds, and this is an East of the Sun, West of the Moon retelling. I'm gonna get those directions right at some point, which I have only read a couple retellings of that, but this was by far my favorite. I gave this one 4 stars. I actually wasn't super excited for this one because I didn't really know the characters. Like, they had been mentioned, but I didn't really know them. But I ended up being so sucked into this plot, and it was just really, really fun. I don't know how to say our main girl's name. I'm going to put it up on screen. I should know how to say it, I know. But she is a singer, so she's one of the ones that can kind of harness the magic from the land and use it to do different stuff. And her family has been saving up for her to be able to go to the academy, which when I tell you I want a series about that academy, I just want academy setting books is what I really want. But just as an idea, they are trying to save up money though for her to go to the academy, but then her father randomly comes home and he's not a great guy. He's a piece of work, and he discovers the money and is all upset that they're holding it out on him, so he takes the money and goes and tries to gamble it, and then that doesn't go well, so he takes her to the tavern and gambles away her hand in marriage, and obviously that's not great. So we have our main guy, and I don't know how to pronounce his name either. How am I supposed to say that? Her lift? He lift? He lift? Her lift? Her lift? I don't know. And he is there and things happen, and because of the curse that comes with the East of the Sun, West of the Moon retelling, he basically transforms into a bear, a big white bear. And I've read a couple and I didn't really love how that went, but I actually really liked the elements of this book and how that worked into the plotline. I was very invested. I was very intrigued, even though it is an arranged marriage of convenience, if you will. I still really liked a lot of elements about this one, and this was my second favorite book of the series. The fourth book in the series is Song of Moonrise, and this is a Little Red Riding Hood retelling. One thing I have to say about this book, I gave it 3.5 stars because of like plot details and whatnot, but what I really liked about this one in particular was our main girl is Rosa, and she never wanted to be a princess, but her mother became the queen by marrying the king, so she is now the stepdaughter of the king, and the step-family relationships were fantastic. It was so refreshing to see that, because in fairy tale retellings, the step-families are typically evil. You know, like Cinderella, Snow White, they're all evil. They're all evil. But this one, they weren't, and that was really nice. And her stepbrother is Prince Otto, and he was great. I loved the dynamics of them too. Like, they were so much fun. Their banter, his teasing, just great. Most of my highlights from this book, because I read it as a Kindle book, were their conversations. I really liked them. And so he was just like a hopeless romantic, and I was so excited for his story, which is the next one, which we'll talk about in a minute. But I did really like a lot of different elements of this book. I didn't necessarily care though for like the ending or the Little Red Riding Hood elements, but I liked the details on like the family relationships, because basically there is a forest off to the side of the country, and the magic is getting a little too much. It's getting too intense, and so there's different rumors of mutant giant wolves happening. And so Rosa is still being Little Miss Stubborn and going and visiting her grandparents in the forest, as Little Red Riding Hood does. And different things happen. She meets a handsome young man in the forest. It's the theme of this video. And turns out he's the crown prince of the neighboring country, so you know, no big deal there. And different things happen. I didn't love that dynamic, but I did really like different elements of it. So I gave this one 3.5 stars personally. So speaking of Prince Otto, who was Rosa in book 4's stepbrother, the Hansel and Gretel retelling, Song of Trails, which is book 5, was his story, and I like Otto. Otto was great. I also, though, really liked Gisela and her brother, Hayden, in this. I really liked their close sibling relationship as well, and just what's happening in the forest, the mystery, because they're trying to figure out what's going on in the forest. Why is the magic being unstable, basically? And it's a continuation of that throughout this whole series. But it really comes to play in these last 3 books. But I'm going to suggest you read them in order. I know, you might be like, Lindsay, but that doesn't sound interesting in the first book. So you're making these other books sound interesting. I know I'm doing a bad job at that. But take my advice and read them in order, because then you get to see the couples from the prior books, and it's just like, and it's fine. Okay, it's fine. So I take my word for it. But this is a Hansel and Gretel retelling, and how those elements came into play in this plot line, it was just so creative. I think it's so amazing when an author can take a well-known fairy tale story and just turn it on its head, or just change it, and it's so just fun and intriguing. And I don't know, I liked it. My dear friends, I liked it. And so Gisela in this book is the protector of her younger brother, Hayden, who is a singer. And there was a lot of problems with that in their family when they found out he was a singer. And so they've kind of just been on their own for the last bit of time in the woods. Well, not in the woods, in the forest. And then they stumble upon Prince Otto's traveling party, and they get roped up in that and different things. I just liked Prince Otto. Bottom line, I really liked him. I gave this one 4 stars. But then the final book in the series was by far my favorite, and I think it's because I really liked the conclusion and just how everything happened and revealed, but I just also really liked the main couple, and that is Song of Vines. This is a Jack and the Beanstalk retelling, but it is gender swapped. So I think we say her name Jacinta, I'm gonna go with that, and then he's Mathis. I think I can get those 2 names. And I liked this one the most. It might have been a little cliche there at the end. I don't care. Don't care, not at all. I made the mistake of starting this book really late at night, and I got so sucked in I couldn't put it down. So I ended up finishing it in the wee hours of the morning. It was not my smartest idea. But my dear friends, this is a childhood best friends to more trope. Hi, I'm Lindsay, and that's my trope that I'll just like, yes, give it to me. So, That's what I just like binged this series. But this one was so cute. The romance parts, just, it was cute. It was really, really cute. What else can I tell y'all about this one? Because we have like that childhood best friends and then they kind of had to drift away for different reasons. We do have a kind of stupid reason. We do have a stupid reason, but they weren't really, it wasn't their fault. It was other circumstances and other people at play. So I was willing to give it a pass. I still really liked it. I gave it 4.5 stars. Also, we got to see my favorite couples in this book. So book 3 and 5's couples, we saw them the most at the end. And I was really happy about that because those were my favorite couples. So that definitely helped. And then I thought it was really interesting that it's the Jack and the Beanstalk, but it's Ginger swap. And she's kind of forced to become the spy for his father, the king, who's not the best, but she's forced to be the spy because she's the only one that can go into the giants' land. And that's like a big deal. Everyone wants to know what's going on with the giants. Are they preparing to do war on the humans? Are they going to like take us over and crush us into, what is it, the, I'll grind your bones to make my bread, or fee fi fo fum, you know that. So are they going to do that? What's happening here? And so she was able to get through the banishment wall, which is the big wall that basically separates the giants' land and the humans' land. And there's a lot of things going on. This series really builds up to this last book with the mystery of what's going on with the uncontrolled magic and what's happening, the political kind of content, if you will, as well. And I just really liked it. You can give me childhood best friends to more any day, but then if you add in like dangerous spying missions, gibby, I'm ready. So yes, I did actually really like this one. You also have Mathis, his sister. The three of them always played together when they were younger, and she was just great. She was adorable. I really liked the sister as well. She was so much fun. And so, yes, that is the main of this series. I'm so sorry, I just had a coughing fit, so now I'm going to look like I've been crying. I haven't really been crying, I'm so sorry. But that is basically this main series, and then there is a spin-off series, if you will. Not really. It's a connection in this world, but I haven't read them yet. It's the Heart Song trilogy, and so I'm going to read those very soon while this series is still fresh in my brain. So I also read in book 4, we have Gisella's younger brother, Hayden. He got his own book in a multi-authored series, and that was Island of Secrets and Sacrifice. And I gave this one 3 stars. I didn't care for this one as much. It's been like 6 years since the 4th book of the main series. And he needed his big sister to just like come and wallop him over the head, in my opinion. But I was getting frustrated with him. This is not a fairy tale retelling, but it's about a girl whose name just went out of my head, Ember. And she has basically been trapped in this island that is basically a cult. She's always been trapped there, and then they have this whole where a young maiden has to be sacrificed to the monster that is protecting their island from other people. And guess who gets picked? Her. So she gets thrown onto the boat and things happen. And, well, what does the back cover say? Can I give you a little more info, or would that be spoilers? Let's find out. Okay, it doesn't really say, so I'll be vague on that. But basically, Ember and him meet, and he has been cursed by a petty little elf to basically look like a monster, and so of course misunderstandings happen. She is kind of the very typical feisty, redheaded female main character, and he tested my patience a lot. At the end of this book, though, I was very excited to read the Heart Song series, which is a series that's set on an island that's been hinted throughout all of these books. So I'm definitely going to be getting to that one soon, like I already said. But yeah, I gave this one 3 stars. I'll probably buy a copy of it just to have with this series. But I didn't really like it a lot, which was unfortunate. But he was just broody and moody. And as we've discovered, if you didn't already know, in this video, I don't do grumpy guys. Just no, they're not my thing. And he was very grumpy. They had their cute moments. But it was what honestly kept me the most interested in the book was her fantasy-like cult setting. Like, I don't really do books with cults, but it was very interesting to read a fantasy setting of one. So He was very grumpy. She was feisty. It all worked out in the end. There you go. And that is the end of this recent read. All the books I read in January. Let me organize our stack. And then we will sign off. Here we are. This is our stack for today. A decent stack, I would say. Yes. I am so excited. The Deborah Grace White books came today, right before I had to film. So I was like, okay, I'm filming this video then. So that's what we did. We filmed this video. Yay. I feel like my brain's been all over the place in this one. I'm running on little sleep today, but that's nothing new, so I can't really use that as an excuse. Any noodle doodle, that is the end of this video. I'd love to know if you've read any of these. Do you want to read any of these? If you've read any Camille Peter books, please tell me which ones were the best, because I'm not sure about the series I'm currently reading. One of her other series sounds better in my opinion. I don't know. I'm going to give the one I'm reading a couple more tries, a couple more books, but so far I'm not sure. If you have any other fairy tale recommendations, please let me know. Because now I've read Deborah Grace White's main ones, and now I'm just like, well, what do I do? What do I do? I'm going to read Sarah Baran's. Like, expect that. I'm so excited to catch up on her books because I've been enjoying them so much. But I've also heard a lot about Brittany Fitcher, her books, and I really want to read those. And I have a list, but feel free to give me more recommendations. So that is the end of this video. That is the stack of books. We are going to be organizing this insane mess behind me, I think, in my next video. I think that's going to be my next one. I'm going to answer y'all's Q&A questions while we organize, because we desperately need to organize. It's getting messy. So I will see y'all next time, though. Thank you so much for watching. Let me know if you want to read any of these. I hope I explained them well enough. I feel like, I don't know, a squirrel on caffeine or something right now. But I hope you enjoyed this video. Hopefully some of these maybe caught your eye, got your attention. If you've read any of them, let me know your thoughts. I'd love to hear it. And I will see y'all next time. I'm trying not to drop them, sorry. That's why I keep looking down. But I'll see y'all next time. Thank you so much for watching. I am Lindsay from the blog booksforchristiangirls.blogspot.com, where there is a new review every Monday. Nope. There is a new review every Wednesday and Friday in 2025. And then I'm also on Instagram on 2 different accounts. And then Goodreads, TikTok, Facebook, here on YouTube, and just basically all the social media sites. So I will see y'all next time. I hope you have an absolutely lovely rest of your day. Bye, y'all.